Suffering is not a punishment, but an invitation to become stronger. Socrates. Before we begin, here's a small ritual. Write in the comments one word that accurately describes your current state. Sign it, and let's get started. Pain never asks for permission. It enters quietly, or bursts in like a storm, without knocking. One day, everything seems stable. The next, it feels like the floor disappears. A breakup, a failure, a betrayal. Something inside cracks. And the first instinct is to collapse, to question everything, to freeze in place, hoping it all turns out to be just a nightmare. But pain isn't chaos. Pain is structure breaking. It's the body, the heart, the mind, all screaming that the old system no longer works, that the mask doesn't fit, that the path you are walking no longer leads anywhere real. Pain never comes to punish, it comes to pull. It drags you forward, sometimes gently, sometimes by the throat. And even if your first reaction is resistance, the truth stays the same. Pain is not here to break you, it's here to transform you. Imagine a man sitting alone after a breakup. The silence is heavy. He replays moments, words, mistakes. He feels empty, rejected, less than. But beneath all that sorrow, there's a door cracking open. What if he used that silence to see himself clearly? What if he let go of the illusion that this was the only woman for him? What if this pain wasn't a loss, but a redirection? Every wound carries two paths. One leads to collapse, victimhood, endless loops of self-pity. The other leads to energy, motion, fire. The man could let this break him, or he could use it to build a version of himself that never again depends on someone else for his worth. Stronger, sharper, focused. Pain sharpens you if you let it. The end of a job, a betrayal by a friend, public humiliation. None of these things are accidents. They're mirrors. They show you what needs to go, what you've outgrown, what parts of your identity are ready to be shed like old skin. And yes, it burns. But sometimes the fire isn't punishment, it's purification. Everyone says growth is beautiful, but they forget that real growth usually starts in the wreckage, not in the applause, in the silence after everything falls apart. The truth is brutal and clean. Pain is information. It's your soul updating you. The same way your hand pulls away from a hot stove without thinking, your inner system does the same. Something hurts. So something's wrong, or something's done. Pain doesn't lie. The question is not, why did this happen to me? The real shift happens when you say, this happened for me. That heartbreak, it stripped away illusions. That failure, it shattered the comfort zone. That insult, it exposed a place inside you that still depends on others for validation. You weren't being attacked. You were being shown. And if you pay attention, really pay attention, you realize pain is precise. It never strikes randomly. It goes straight to the weakest point, the place that needs growth, the blind spot, the lie you've been living, the identity that needs to die. So let it. Let that version of you fall away. Mourn if you must. But don't cling, because what's coming is better if you build it. That woman who left, she's not your destination. She was your mirror. She came to show you what part of you was still sleeping, still weak, still too dependent. Her exit is your invitation to rise, to refine, to reforge. Pain forces choice. Either you break or you build. That's the moment everything shifts. Not because the pain disappears, but because you stop resisting it. You start using it, feeding off it, turning it into fuel. And what comes next? Power. But not the loud kind. Not revenge, not ego. Real power. The kind that moves quietly. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything. The kind that just is. And you realize, pain was never your enemy. It was your test, your teacher, your turning point. The moment you see pain as a gift, you stop fearing it. And when you stop fearing it, you become something most people never reach. Unshakable. Because now you know the truth. Nothing can destroy you, not when you know how to build from the rubble. There are only two directions after pain, down or forward, collapse or rise. Some people choose to suffer. They build a home in pain, decorate it with old memories, and sit there. They wait for someone to rescue them, to apologize, to return what's been lost. But pain doesn't reward waiting. It rewards movement. That's the moment when a person either becomes a victim or a player. The victim keeps asking, "Why me?" replaying every failure like a broken record. The player says, "Because I can handle it, and because I'll use it." Pain doesn't ask you to cry, it dares you to create. When you lose something or someone, life is giving you space. Not just emptiness, but clean, raw space. And now you get to choose what to build inside it. That breakup that shattered you, it's a door into your own growth, a door to rebuilding your body, your habits, your focus, a door to upgrading the way you love, the way you see people, the way you trust yourself. Because maybe what hurt the most wasn't the loss of the person, but the loss of the image you had of yourself with them. And now you get to reforge that image, this time without illusions. When someone walks away, they take their story with them, but they leave you with the pen. You can write something better, smarter, sharper. The pain they gave you is your ink. Use it. When a job ends, most people panic, but the player doesn't. The player knows when something ends, it's because it had nothing more to teach. And now the pressure is building for a new level. Maybe it's your own business, maybe a better position, maybe a complete shift of direction. But it's never nothing. The pain of rejection in work is just redirection. The pain of being fired is often the universe screaming, "You're meant for more, but you were too scared to jump, so I pushed." And when people betray you, when you taste humiliation, exclusion, disloyalty, it's a brutal upgrade, not to make you colder, but clearer. You start seeing who's real. You learn to stop giving discounts on your time, your energy, your loyalty. You build standards, boundaries, a spine. That's the currency of pain. It costs pride, but it buys power. Not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that refuses to be dominated. Not by others, not by fear, not even by loss. The player mindset is simple. Everything can be used. There's no wasted energy, no useless failure, no pointless heartbreak. Everything is a brick, and pain just hands you more of them. You build faster, you build stronger. While the victim waits for comfort, the player creates direction. While the victim looks back, the player looks through the mess, through the noise, through the silence. He keeps moving, because pain doesn't stop him, it fuels him. Some of the most powerful men were forged in pain, not because they enjoyed it, but because they refused to let it be empty. They turned it into muscle, into vision, into hunger. That hunger is the edge. It's the thing that keeps you awake when others sleep, keeps you focused when others break, keeps you building when others quit. And all of it comes from a simple choice: to play the game instead of folding, to sharpen instead of shatter. Life will never stop testing you. That's not a threat. It's a gift. Because every test is a chance to level up. But you can't rise while clinging to your excuses. You can't evolve while blaming others. You can't become powerful while playing powerless. So drop the story. Drop the old titles. The heartbroken one, the rejected one, the unlucky one. You're none of those things. You're becoming something entirely new. Someone who doesn't just survive pain, but uses it like a tool. And in time, pain becomes something else. It becomes recognition. You see it coming, and instead of fear, you feel focus. You feel fire. You know this pain is the start of something, a test, a doorway, a call, and you answer it every time. When something disappears from your life, a person, a job, a friendship, a plan, it always feels like a hole opens, like something essential has been ripped out. But life doesn't operate on emptiness. It operates on cycles. Every loss is followed by space, and every space is waiting to be filled. The mistake is in clinging to what left, staring at the closed door so long that you miss the new one opening behind you. Nothing leaves your life unless it's making room for something better, and usually something more aligned with who you're becoming. It doesn't always feel better at first, but that's because you haven't stepped into the version of you that's ready to receive it. Think of every painful ending. At first it's chaos, doubt, grief, but wait long enough, or grow fast enough, and something shifts. The breakup you thought would destroy you suddenly feels like the best thing that ever happened. The job that ended becomes the push you needed to chase something real. The person who walked away becomes a blurry memory, and in their place comes someone who actually sees you. But here's the key. That shift doesn't happen if you keep holding on to the old. If you stay mentally glued to the past, you block the future. The universe never subtracts without preparing to add, but it doesn't force you to move on. It offers the lesson. You either take it or repeat it. Every failed relationship isn't just an emotional wound. It's a lesson in clarity. What did you tolerate that you shouldn't have? Where did you shrink to be loved? What did you abandon in yourself to keep someone else comfortable? And most importantly, who are you now, without that weight? The space their absence leaves is sacred. It's where you rebuild. And if you rebuild with honesty, strength, and self-respect, you don't just attract better, you become better. Better to others, better to yourself. Same goes for career. You lose a position, and the panic kicks in, the fear of starting over. But look closer. Were you thriving there, or just surviving? Was your talent being used or wasted? Was your soul alive or numbed out for a paycheck? Most people wait until something collapses before they admit the truth. They had already outgrown it. The comfort zone became a cage, and pain was the key that unlocked it. You lose one opportunity, and 5 more wait behind the curtain. But they only appear when you're brave enough to stop begging for the old and start building the new. Pain clears the stage. It removes characters who were never meant to stay. It ends chapters that were dragging, and it puts you face to face with your next decision. Hold on, or move forward. That's the law of replacement. Not just spiritual, but psychological. When the mind releases its grip on the past, new patterns become possible. New identities, new experiences. Not by force, but by permission. You allow life to surprise you again. And here's what's wild. What comes next is almost always better. Not because it's flashier, but because it fits you. The new partner values what the old one dismissed. The new job challenges you in ways that excite you. The new friends mirror your growth instead of your trauma. But these upgrades only land when you're ready to make peace with what left. To bless it, thank it, and release it. Not because it was perfect, but because it pushed you to grow. Every loss carries a seed. Inside that seed is not just healing, but evolution. You're not just recovering, you're upgrading. If you let the pain guide you instead of bury you, you'll see the path open. And soon, what once felt like the end will feel like the beginning. Not a repeat, a reboot. You won't just get back what you lost. You'll rise into something far beyond what you imagined. Pain can be heavy like a stone tied to your chest, but it can also be fire under your feet. The difference is what you do with it. Most people sit in pain like it's a prison cell, but if you realize it's a battery, it holds charge, emotion, energy. If you stop seeing pain as something to avoid and start seeing it as something to redirect, everything changes. That heartbreak becomes a workout. That failure becomes a plan. That silence becomes a strategy. The very thing that hurt you can become the fuel that drives you further, faster, deeper. But only if you decide that it will. Pain by itself doesn't elevate. Action does. Take anyone who's ever changed their life, not improved it slightly, changed it completely. You'll find pain at the center. The guy who built a business empire after being cheated on. The girl who became a powerhouse after being fired. The quiet one who turned a breakdown into a transformation. None of that came from calm. It came from chaos. But they didn't stay there. They turned the emotional shock into clarity, into motion. They used pain as pressure and pressure as purpose. Because pressure, when harnessed, doesn't crush you, it sculpts you. There's a point after every impact where your system opens. You feel raw. Everything is loud. Emotions boil. And that's where most people shut down. But if you step into it instead, if you lean forward instead of curling up, that intensity becomes usable. It sharpens your focus. You stop caring about distractions. You stop needing approval. You stop playing small. Pain forces you into the now. It puts you face to face with what actually matters. And if you move with it, not against it, it becomes momentum. Pain is pressure, but pressure builds diamonds. Pressure builds muscle. Pressure builds legends. Think of the pain as weight in the gym. If you just sit under it, you'll collapse. But if you lift it, push against it, sweat through it, you grow. You walk out stronger. And next time, it feels lighter. Pain builds your emotional strength the same way. Every time you stand up under it, you expand. Not just survive, expand. That's the secret most people miss. Pain isn't the enemy, it's the test, the threshold, the heat that turns you from soft to steel. There's something powerful that happens when you stop asking for comfort. You stop needing life to be gentle. You stop expecting fairness. And in that moment, you become different. You stop flinching. You stop waiting. You stop wishing. And you start building. That moment, when you shift from why me to watch me, that's when you become dangerous. Not in the destructive way, in the unshakable way. You start using every disappointment as data, every fall as fuel, every betrayal as blueprint. And pain stops being something that happens to you. It becomes something that works for you. Let pain be the reason you move. Let it be the spark that ignites your next level. Let it be the silence that clears out the noise. Let it be the pressure that makes you sharper than ever. But never let it go to waste. If it hurt you, let it build you. If it broke you, let it rebuild you better. Pain is not random. It's not unfair. It's information. And the faster you learn to use it, the faster you evolve. Pain isn't just about loss. Sometimes it's about clarity. It strips away what isn't true. It tears down the images we built to feel safe. And as much as it hurts, there's something freeing in that collapse. Because most of what we think we need isn't real. The approval we chase, the roles we play, the people we bend for, the standards we inherited from others. Pain burns through all of it. It doesn't destroy who you are, it destroys who you're not. And when the smoke clears, what's left is raw, honest, unfiltered you. Not the version that tried to please everyone. The version that's real. Illusions are comfortable. That's why we keep them. We build stories in our minds to explain things, to make us feel okay. They left because I wasn't good enough. I failed because I'm not talented. I'm stuck because the world is unfair. But pain comes to break those stories, not because they're true, but because they're cages. When someone leaves you, it's not always a reflection of your worth. Sometimes it's just life removing a bad fit. When you fail, it's not proof that you're broken. It's feedback, a signal that something in your system needs upgrading. When pain hits, the lie gets exposed. And you have a choice: protect the lie or face the truth. Most people cling to the lie because truth costs. It asks you to change. It demands effort. But pain doesn't wait. It keeps pressing until you're forced to see. You see how much of your identity was built on fear, on pleasing others, on trying to fit in. You see that the image you had of your perfect life wasn't even yours. It was downloaded from other people's expectations. Pain burns through that script. It empties your hands so you can finally build something of your own. And here's the thing, when the illusion dies, so does the weakness. Because weakness lives in the fake. The more real you become, the less fragile you are. You stop depending on shaky things, attention, validation, comfort. You build on bedrock, purpose, direction, discipline. That's what pain reveals. It's not just about what you lost. It's about what you were leaning on that couldn't hold you. The relationship that fell apart wasn't strong enough. The job that drained you wasn't meant for your gifts. The lifestyle that collapsed was built on pretense, and when it all breaks, it frees you. Freedom doesn't always feel like joy. Sometimes it feels like grief. You grieve the person you were, the dreams that died, the comfort that disappeared. But under that grief is truth, and truth is clean. It hurts, but it clears. Like ripping off a mask you've worn for years. Suddenly you can breathe, even if it stings. And from that breath, a new path begins. One that isn't based on illusion, but on what actually matters to you. So let the fire come. Let the illusions burn. Let the old versions of you fall apart. Because on the other side of that destruction is alignment. The kind of alignment that can't be shaken. Because it's not built on trends or temporary feelings. It's built on who you really are. Pain is the great revealer. It doesn't ask for your permission. It just shows up and tears the curtain. And once you've seen behind it, you can't unsee. That's the beginning of everything. Not all pain shows up as sadness. Sometimes it comes as rage, as sharp hot fire in the chest, as clenched fists and silent screams. And most people are afraid of that part of themselves. They were taught that anger is dangerous, uncivilized, shameful. So they push it down, hide it, deny it. But that shadow energy, that suppressed force, doesn't disappear. It waits. And if you don't learn how to use it, it will use you. But here's the truth. Anger is not your enemy. When directed with clarity, it's power. Raw, wild, unapologetic power. The kind that doesn't beg for change. It creates it. Anger means something inside you knows you deserve more. It means your boundaries were crossed, your value ignored, your truth silenced. That fire you feel isn't a flaw. It's a signal. And if you keep smothering it, pretending everything's fine, you don't become stronger. You become smaller. The goal is not to explode or destroy. The goal is to channel, to use the heat as fuel. You take the rejection, the betrayal, the disrespect, and you build. You hit the gym. You launch the project. You shift your life, not out of revenge, out of rebirth. The shadow holds gold, the parts of you you've hidden, the aggression, the hunger, the dominance, the need to be seen. They're not evil. They're tools. They only become toxic when ignored. But when faced, when integrated, they turn into precision, into unstoppable focus, into a level of self-respect that no one can shake. Your shadow isn't something to be afraid of. It's something to partner with, because in that darkness is the edge you've been missing. There are moments when soft motivation doesn't work, when affirmations feel like lies, when meditation can't touch the storm inside. That's when you need your shadow. That's when you need the part of you that's tired of being overlooked, mistreated, underestimated. That energy can lift more weight than logic ever could. It can fuel discipline when inspiration fades. It can drive change when patience runs out. That's not darkness, that's direction. The warrior in you doesn't ask for calm, he builds in chaos. You don't heal by erasing your emotions. You heal by understanding them, by making them work for you. Anger can be focus. It can be movement. It can be a boundary that finally holds. You turn it into early mornings, into late nights, into clean decisions and bold steps, into silence when it's time to move in secret, into volume when it's time to make your presence known. The shadow doesn't want to destroy your life. It wants to protect it. But it needs your leadership. Revenge is a dead end. Power is not about proving someone wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about taking all the heat, all the frustration, all the noise, and turning it into precision, creation, clarity. It's about becoming the version of yourself that no longer needs to be angry because you've already built the life no one can take from you. That's what happens when the shadow is integrated. The storm becomes strategy, the fire becomes focus, and nothing, no insult, no loss, no rejection, can knock you off course again. Pain doesn't just change what you feel, it changes who you are. You enter it as one person and come out as another, not because you forced yourself to grow, but because the old version of you couldn't survive what you went through. That version had cracks, blind spots, weak points, and pain exposed them all, not to humiliate you, to upgrade you. Growth is not about adding more. Sometimes it's about burning away everything false. You don't rise by stacking, you rise by shedding. Layer after layer of ego, illusion, fear. What's left is not weakness. It's your real strength, finally uncovered. At first it feels like loss. You miss the comfort of who you were. You miss the certainty. You miss the people who knew the older version of you, even if that version wasn't whole. But stay there long enough, and the grief transforms. It stops being about who you were and starts being about who you're becoming. That shift is subtle but massive, because now you're not trying to go back. You're building forward. That's when identity becomes choice, not memory. You stop asking, "Who was I before this pain?" And you start asking, "Who am I now that I've seen what I can survive?" Pain is the gate, and every time you go through it, you leave something behind. An old habit, an old pattern, an old version of love that was too small for you. You start to see your standards rise, not because you're bitter, but because you're clear. You no longer tolerate the things that used to trap you. Fake friendships, surface-level conversations, shallow relationships, cheap validation. You crave depth, silence, power without noise. You crave your own presence. And that's when you know the new identity is settling in, when solitude becomes strength, not punishment. People will notice. They'll feel the shift. Some will fall away, confused or offended that you're no longer available for their games. Let them. The new you doesn't need to explain. You're not rejecting them. You're just no longer compatible. Their version of you doesn't exist anymore. That's the cost of growth. Every new level demands a new circle, a new mindset, a new mission. And if the old world doesn't clap for you, good. You're not performing anymore. There's a moment, deep into the transformation, when you stop reacting. Things that used to trigger you, don't. Words that used to cut slide right off. You're no longer hungry for revenge because you've already fed on discipline, creation, evolution. You're too full to chase noise. That's not numbness. That's power. Because you're not suppressing. You've just mastered the emotional terrain. The storms still come, but you've built a fortress within. Pain no longer controls you. It sharpens you. And the new identity becomes less about who you show the world, and more about how deeply you know yourself. This is the point where peace enters. Not the fragile peace that depends on everything going right, but the peace that comes from knowing you'll be fine no matter what goes wrong. The peace that's built on evidence, real evidence, that you've been through fire and came out focused, that you've been abandoned and still stood tall, that you've lost everything you thought you needed, and still created more than you had before. This kind of peace doesn't shake. It doesn't flex. It just is. And as that identity solidifies, so does your path. You no longer need a map. You move by instinct. not survival instinct, creation instinct. You see opportunities where others see endings. You feel patterns that others miss. You make decisions fast, not out of impulse, but from alignment. You've cleared out the noise, the self-doubt, the old conditioning, and now your moves are clean, sharp, intentional. You're no longer reacting to life. You're sculpting it. Every action a brushstroke, every word a choice, every moment a piece of the structure you're building, not to impress anyone but to honor who you've become. The beauty of this new identity is that it doesn't need validation. It's not loud. It doesn't chase applause. It walks into a room and doesn't have to say a word. Presence says everything, because people can feel it. That quiet certainty, that calm fire, that sense of someone who's done the inner work, who's faced himself, who's chosen himself. That energy can't be faked, and once you own it, you never go back. Not because you're forcing yourself to move forward, but because you finally understand what real self-respect feels like. It's not pride, it's peace. And peace is the most expensive thing on earth. This new identity doesn't mean you stop feeling. You still feel, deeply. But you don't drown. You process, then you move. You stumble, then you rise. You don't chase closure, you create it. You don't beg for understanding. You embody clarity. And that's where real freedom begins, when your life is no longer a response to pain, but a reflection of power. Not the power to dominate, the power to direct, the power to walk away, the power to choose, the power to start again, and again, and again, without losing yourself. If you're in pain right now, this isn't theory for you, it's survival. The weight on your chest, the silence that won't leave, the thoughts that spiral when you're alone, it's all real. And no amount of nice words can fix it. But there is something that can. Not comfort, not distraction, not fake positivity. What can fix it is motion. Not random, chaotic motion. Intentional, clear, focused. Because the moment you move, truly move, everything inside you begins to shift. Not because the pain vanishes, but because you start changing faster than the pain can hold on. Here's the key. Pain becomes a prison only when you sit in it. The longer you stare at the wound, the more it owns you. But pain becomes power when you decide it's fuel. Not because you ignore it, but because you use it. That heartbreak? Use it to rebuild your focus. That failure? Use it to upgrade your strategy. That rejection? Use it to strengthen your self-worth. It's not a metaphor, it's a practice. You turn pain into achievement through structure, through obsession, through a system. Here's how. Step 1. Name it. Not just I feel bad. Be precise. What exactly hurts? What exactly feels unfair, heavy, broken? Write it. Define it. Because clarity is the first slice through chaos. Step 2. Find the mirror. What in you allowed this pain to land so hard? What weakness did it touch? What illusion did it expose? No blame, just brutal honesty. This is where the lesson lives. Step 3. Pick a direction. 1. Clear, measurable. You don't fix heartbreak by sitting with emotions forever. You fix it by building the version of you that doesn't depend on the past to feel complete. So, pick the area, your body, your income, your skills, your purpose, and start there. Step 4. Create non-negotiables. Pain will whisper lies. It will tell you to sleep longer, skip the gym, isolate, procrastinate. You don't argue with it. You override it. Set a daily discipline. Something small but sacred. Morning workouts, daily journaling, cold showers, deep work sessions. You show your nervous system who's in charge, and little by little, your identity begins to shift. Step 5. Repeat with obsession. Not intensity for one day. Consistency for weeks, months. You want to destroy the version of you that pain trapped? Outgrow it. You don't heal by thinking. You heal by evolving. You don't win by fighting the past. You win by building a future that makes the past irrelevant. And somewhere along the way, you'll notice the pain is still there, but it's quieter. Then it's background noise. Then it's just a memory. And in its place stands something unbreakable. You. And here's the most valuable truth of all. When you've truly turned pain into progress, you stop fearing pain. You stop avoiding loss. You stop playing small. Because now you know, even if life hits hard again, and it will, you have a process. You have proof. You've done it before. You'll do it again. And no matter what breaks, you won't. That's the formula. Feel fully, see clearly, act daily, repeat ruthlessly, and from the ashes, build something so powerful that the pain no longer matters. Not because you forgot it, but because you used it to rise. This is not inspiration. It's instruction. This is not motivation. It's method. The pain you feel is not random. It's raw material. And you, right now, are the sculptor. So pick up the tools and build. Because there is no going back. There is only forward. And forward is where your power lives. We're sure you've discovered plenty of value, so subscribe now and stay connected.